This is from the National Parents Organization.org. It's written October 25, 2012 by Michael Sharon, S-H-E-R-R-O-N. I'm not even sure if I've read this. I just picked it up. We'll check it out here. In this article, we are going to focus on the federal program of child support enforcement that every state in the United States adheres to in an effort to secure money from non-custodial parents and to divert it to custodial parents so that these parents can then use the money for their children. Well, sort of. The problem with child support enforcement is that this agency has a forward-facing public side that most people have been socialized to accept. When thinking about child support and the enforcement of non-custodial parents, we surmise that most people believe that enforcement is a wonderful program that has the sole purpose of taking care of children. And in most cases, this is true. Nobody at Fathers and I think it was Fathers and Families. It says Fathers and Fathers here, but anyway. Nobody there had, whoever wrote this, National Parents Organization, or whoever it is, nobody has any problem with both parents supporting their children. And if one parent is purposefully absent, then enforcement of child support is a good thing, of course. However, there is a rear-facing side of child support enforcement that is not well known or talked about much by judges, politicians, and many special interest groups. This fact being that there is an industry surrounding enforcement that is replenishing money for welfare, TANF, T-A-N-F, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and other low-income assistance programs. In looking at the Federal Social Security Act, Title IV, Part D, Section 458, you will see language that allows the U.S. federal government to give back incentive payments to U.S. states for performance-based child support collection, paternity establishment, and administrative costs. Typically, these incentive payments go back to social services programs because the thinking is after a divorce, many women will end up using programs like TANF and welfare, for which U.S. states have little money in their budgets. While the exact amount of money is hard to define because of performance and the fact that different states get back different amounts, many studies show that the average is that for every $1 child support collected, $1 is released from Social Security coffers that can then be given back to the U.S. states. Ted, if you know any different, you can chime in here anywhere.
I will.
In our thinking, there are several problems with child support enforcement. If U.S. states are dependent on this federal money from the collection of child support, then there is also a dependence on the non-custodial parent not having equal access to their children, so that they pay greater child support, which triggers the release of more federal money, reward money. Fathers and Families, yeah, that's who it is, has serious concerns that enforcement of child support is in direct conflict with equally shared parenting for all parents and extended families. Under equally shared parenting, many non-custodial parents would pay considerably less child support because of increased time with their children, or they would pay no child support at all. Under equal parenting, there is significantly less federal money available for welfare programs, and most U.S. states would be in financial crisis, trying to solve funding of low-income programs because of it. Another issue that is very frightening for our organization is that most child support enforcement programs are housed under U.S. Health and Human Services agencies like social services. Typically, these agencies investigate cases of child abuse, neglect, and dependency, and they often have legislative immunity for any wrong they may commit. Hang on a second, my sign's blowing over.
That all sounds right on money. The people who created the incentive program were 15 Department of Health and Human Resources workers and 11 HHS workers, Health and Human Resources workers. So
I'm losing you a bit there, Ted. You're in and out. Were you off the mic or something?
No, I'm right here. It might be just your side of Zoom with the wind, but it's going through the broadcaster just fine.
It's just that I couldn't hear you there for a second.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm really psyched that we're not getting a lot of wind noise. A little bit, but not very much.
Yeah, I think because of all the trees around here, we might get less. But we do have a northeast wind today, so that's why we're getting a good bit. Okay, where was I here?
You're at the Department of Health and Human Resources, or Health and...
Okay. So typically these agencies investigate cases of child abuse, neglect, and dependency, and they often have legislative immunity for any wrong they may commit. Historically, social services agencies have been about providing services for women and children, and we are concerned that in many cases, especially those involving child protective service matters, that social services policies and procedures have enforcement mentality in mind when dealing with non-custodial families, while being geared towards services provider with custodial mothers. So they're enforcers with fathers and service providers with custodial mothers. Furthermore, social services knows that if a child abuse, neglect, or dependency case can be made on a father, then he will pay greater child support. Again, this will also lead to greater Title 4D money being delivered back to the state. So that means if they can falsely accuse a father of being a criminal, they get more money. How about that? Again, this will also lead to greater Title 4D money. Yeah, in essence, social services needs for non-custodial parents to exist. And they need them having little visitation, if any, with their children so that they pay greater amount of child support that can be enforced by the federal government. Isn't that lovely? Enforcement. Fathers and families understands that domestic violence and child support enforcement are two completely separate issues. But many special interest groups and lobbyists are starting to collaborate on how domestic violence and child support groups can benefit each other. Unfortunately, the lion's share of combating domestic violence has focused only on female violence. Despite many federal statistics that women hit, use intimidation, and control at the same rate as men. There's a good website for that called mediaradar.org. Shows that women and men commit domestic violence just about the same amount. And in domestic partnerships involving women, the rate is skyrocketing. But you will not hear much talk about this because, unfortunately, domestic violence in itself has become an industry that supports many jobs, infrastructure, programs, and services that needs more and more federal money. Like child support enforcement, and again, domestic violence should be handled on the state, federal, period. It's a crime. It has nothing to do with the U.S. Constitution or the authority of Congress. Like child support enforcement, the higher the statistics on violence, the more federal money will be delivered to groups that administer domestic violence programs. It seems weird, but one could say that these groups need for statistics to remain high so that they get more money. So how does this fit in with child support enforcement? If you are part of a non-custodial family whose child custody case was heard in the family courts, you likely experienced an allegations of domestic violence. Sounds like me. That is becoming almost routine because hopeful custodial mothers realize that it brings them lots of attention and immediately puts a father on the defense. These allegations are a perfect tactical weapon that brings about favor in the family courts. Unfortunately, many of the false allegations will immediately lead to the complete alienation of children from their non-custodial fathers, stepmothers, paternal grandparents, and other family members for an indefinite time. So what happens when a non-custodial father has zero time with his kids? He pays greater child support. And what happens when one pays greater child support? You got it. More Title 4D money is released back to the states. Isn't that lovely? Man, whoever thought of this? It's unbelievable.
It was the social workers themselves thought of it. The Department of Human Services, 15 of them created the incentive program.
Yeah, probably a lot of academics were in on that for gender studies. And
you know how long it took them to put it together? The whole entire incentive program?
A couple weeks or something?
3 months.
Yeah.
That's how long they took on it to research it. This plan to destroy millions of lives over the course of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And the thing that a lot of people don't realize, that the family court system sets the standard for parental relationships, on a legal basis. So it doesn't just affect the family court system, it affects perceptions, but it also affects how CPS handles cases as well. Because like I keep saying on all of my shows, it's almost as easy to create 2 non-custodial parents through the system as it is 1, and then you have a pure for-profit foster child.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's why more mothers are getting screwed now.
Well, what's happening is, there's a lot of talk about different things that are going on the mother's side of things, especially the more far edge of that. But things are being used in the opposite way. I mean, first of all, judges don't really care who the non-custodial parent is anymore because they need that revenue. That needs to keep rising every year. If it doesn't, they'll get somebody else in there who will make it rise. So their incentive is to create a non-custodial parent, period. They don't care, male,
right.
female. If it looks like the female is the easier one to get rid of, that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
But, you know, and another thing people don't realize too are, you know, people who are victims of Title 4E, the foster care side, they're still part of Title 4D. Most of them are paying child support too. So in the foster care system under Title 4E, they're getting both ends of the stick. They're getting the incentives for the child being in foster care instead of with its family, and they're also getting child support from the family.
Right.
They're getting double the money. It's insanity. It's complete insanity.